Howdy ho! Welcome back! Okay, yesterday on A Sound of Crying, we left off with Polly and her siblings showing up to Frederick's house. Frederick ended off by asking his dad if he believed in ghosts, and Polly sat there thinking, okay, something's going to be happening here. So, it was called Young Scientist, the first chapter. Hope you're enjoying this book. Let's get to the second chapter of The Sound of Crying. This is Audiobooks with Gnomes, and let's get at her. Okay, chapter 2 is called The Pool. Here we go. In the morning, Polly was awakened by Michael and Jennifer. "Go away," she growled. "You're interrupting my dream." "Oh, please wake up, Polly," said Michael. She opened her eyes and yawned. "It feels terribly early. You're dressed." "It's sunny outside," said Jennifer. "If you get up, we can go and explore on our own without Frederick," wheedled Michael. Polly, wriggling her toes, admitted to herself that this was an attractive plan. "All right," she said. 10 minutes later, she unbolted the back door and let them into the garden. It gave way to woodland at the top of a long, sloping lawn. "The grass is all wet," said Michael. "Do." Polly looked dubiously at their sandaled feet. "Try to walk carefully." They had damp ankles when they reached the trees. Here, the ground was hummocky and dappled with sunlight, and grass grew in tufts, fine and silky like tender green hair. "It's cushion grass," said Jennifer, sitting on it. "All soft." In the hollows behind the tufts were pine needles, and here and there were scattered little black marbles. "Rabbit droppings," said Polly. "Oh, I want to see a rabbit," said Jennifer. "I doubt that you will. They keep out of the way." "Listen," said Michael, and they all heard a faint murmuring thread of sound. He ran on ahead. "It's a stream," he called. "It must be the one that goes under the drive," said Polly. "It's nicer up here." The water slid and racketed on its way, perfectly clear, although there were numerous small obstructions in its course where dead leaves piled up against twigs and stones. Polly found a stick and knocked one out of the way. "You've made it run all dirty," said Jennifer disapprovingly. Polly used her stick to walk instead, and they began to go up through the wood, clambering over rocks and around bushes, lured on by the stream. It ran now louder, now softer, glinting in the leafy sunshine. Invisible birds twittered ahead. Presently other sounds were drowned by a soft approaching roar. "What are we coming to?" wondered Michael. "Oh, look!" said Polly, pointing. It was a splendid waterfall, quite 2 feet high, with a flurry of foam at its foot. "Real spray," said Jennifer, holding her hand out. Above the fall, the water collected behind the careful dam of boulders to form a long, clear pool. "We could paddle," said Michael. "No," said Polly in hushed tones. "It's deeper than it looks. It would come over your knees." "It's beautiful," murmured Jennifer. "Yes." "Why are we whispering?" whispered Michael. "So we are. I don't know," whispered Polly, and they continued to do so. "Do you think Frederick made it?" "No, it's older than that. Look at the moss on the stones. It's been here a long time." The bed of the pool showed tawny through the reflections of trees and sky. The trees stood round, tall and silent. Polly looked down the slope. "You can't see the house." Then she looked the other way, and just a little further on was a high stone wall, gray-green with lichen, with the stream tumbling out through a hole at its foot. The unexpected sight of something so large and solid made her jump. "What?" gasped Michael. Did she catch his uneasiness, or had he already caught hers? "Why does this place feel frightening?" she whispered slowly. "Is there something here?" "Oh, don't," begged Michael, grabbing her hand. "What?" said Jennifer loudly, looking from one to the other. "What is it?" "Shut up," hissed Polly, frozen. The air seemed to reverberate with the echoes of Jennifer's voice, but she refused to shut up. "I don't like it," she wailed. Something snapped inside Polly, and unreasoning terror took a hold of her. "Let's go," she said urgently, and at once they fled, leaping over obstacles and ducking under branches. In a fraction of the time it had taken them to ascend the slope, they were back on the lawn. Panting, shuddering, hair and shoes full of twiggy fragments, they stood and gazed at each other. "What was it?" said Jennifer. "There wasn't anything there, was there?" "I thought Polly saw something," said Michael. "Only a wall," said Polly. "It wasn't that. It was the pool that was frightening." "I felt as though something was chasing us," he said. "No," said Polly definitely. "It was the place, and the place can't chase you. We're all right now." "I don't understand," complained Jennifer. "Neither do I. It's a mystery. But it was an adventure, wasn't it?" said Polly in lighter tones. "Yes," they replied doubtfully. They went indoors and surprised Uncle Clement, who was making coffee in the kitchen. "Early risers, I'm afraid breakfast won't be ready for a while yet. What do you think of the grounds?" "It must be nice to have a wood of your own," said Polly. Yes and no. Pleasant for youngsters, of course. Perhaps Frederick will discover some of its charm with your assistance." Polly wondered what she ought to reply to this, and in the end said nothing. She accepted a cup of coffee, and the other two had orange juice. Frederick was the next down. He commented on their wet feet. "Have you been playing in the lake?" asked Uncle Clement. "No," said Polly. "I'd rather you didn't, unless you can swim. How many of you can?" "Just Polly." "I see. Where have you been, then?" "Up by the stream." Did you get as far as the little pool? Pretty, isn't it?" "Yes," said Polly grudgingly. "It's rather eerie." Uncle Clement laughed indulgently. Polly asked if he knew who had made it, but he didn't. It had been there when he had bought the house. Then he said they had better go and change into dry socks. "Why didn't you tell them what happened?" asked Jennifer upstairs. "I thought Frederick would laugh," said Polly, and to herself she wondered, what did happen? Aunt Sylvia decreed that the visit to the barber's must take place that day. Michael and Jennifer stayed behind. "You can't bring that bear," said Frederick disapprovingly. "His fur needs cutting, doesn't it, Polly?" protested Hugh. "I don't think they'll do that for you here, Hugh. Number 3 can wait until next time. The man at the home snips a bit off for him," Polly explained. It'll soon be bald at that rate," said Frederick. Number three's fur grows," stated Hugh. "It doesn't seem to," said Polly. "How could it possibly? You just forgot how long it was to start with." Polly knew this was probably true, but Frederick didn't have to say so. Hugh liked to think it grew, and in a babyish way so did she. "Why do you call it number 3? "That's his name," said Polly. "He was mine once." Frederick thought she must be sulking, but in fact she couldn't see that a fuller answer was required. Hugh did bring the bear, but agreed to leave it with Polly while they were in the barber's. She walked up and down the main street with it, looking at the shops and studying the menu in the window of a cafe. Then she rejoined Frederick and an altered Hugh. "What a neat little head," she said, and ruffled it, to Frederick's disapproval. "Do you want to do anything before we get the bus home? We've got half an hour," he said. "Let's go and eat sundaes," suggested Polly. "I haven't any money for that kind of thing." Polly felt sorry for him. "I'll pay," she said, and Frederick wavered, swayed by his appetite. "I've got a lot of vacation money." "Well, thank you," said Frederick awkwardly. At the school he was the only boy who never ate candy. He saved all his pocket money and would soon have enough for a microscope. "What's your favorite subject at school?" he asked Polly. "English. I suppose yours is science. Are you going to be a scientist when you grow up?" "I want to do chemical research." "Do you get all A's in chemistry?" "Usually," he said modestly. Actually, he always did. "Do you in English?" Polly made a face. "No, I don't like grammar." Frederick laid down his spoon and felt in his pocket. "I think I can pay for these after all," he discovered. "I've got the change from the bus fare and the barber money. I'm sure Mother won't mind." Polly noted an unexpected point in Aunt Sylvia's favor. "Do you remember the day you ate 6 ice creams?" he asked suddenly. "Yes, I was sick in the gutter." "Neapolitan sick, because that was the kind of ice cream it was." "It was your fault. You bet me I couldn't eat 6." They grinned at each other. "We had fun that vacation," said Polly. "We were very little," said Frederick, solemn again. Life must be grim for him, thought Polly. Nothing but chemistry. That night she dreamed. She was walking down the drive for the first time again. But she was a different person. She was dressed all in black. Her mother had just died, and she was coming to live with her uncle. She was miserable and cold and carried a small suitcase. Now she came to the house. How large it was! The front door looked very impressive, but before she could look for another, she heard loud barking, and an Alstian bounded into view. He checked when he saw her, then came slowly on, uttering deep-throated growls. She ran for the steps and banged on the door, terrified. She was pressing against the door, and when it opened she fell into the arms of her rescuer. He set her up upright, frowning. He was tall and black-bearded. "Sarah Gray? This is a strange manner of arrival." "I'm sorry," she stammered. "The dog—" "Frightened of the beast?" He sounded contemptuous. "Here, Thugden, good boy. Back to your kennel now." The dog ran away, wagging his tail. "You had nothing to fear. Thugden wouldn't harm anyone unless I told him to do so. Come now, let me shut the door. Don't use this entrance again." "No, Uncle." What? He spoke sharply. "Did you say uncle?" "I'm sorry. I thought you must be my Uncle Simon." He frowned. "I'd rather you didn't call me that. I may as well tell you I don't feel disposed to consider you a relation. My parents closed their doors to your mother when she broke their hearts by running away with a penniless fool. She was no sister of mine after that." Sarah said nothing. She felt lost and confused. "There's bad blood in you," he muttered somberly. "No, there isn't," cried Sarah, scarlet tears springing out of her eyes. He raised his gaze to her face. "Are you contradicting me? I don't advise it in your position. You have no claim on me, you know. I take you in purely as a charity." "I am grateful," said Sarah quietly. "I would prefer you called me sir." "Very well, sir." "I will show you to your room. Come with me now." She followed him up 2 flights of stairs to a little white attic. "Did my mother sleep here?" "Don't be foolish, girl. This was the servants' room when my parents were alive. Now that I am alone, I don't need servants. A woman comes in from the village each day." He turned to go, then paused. "And, Sarah, will you oblige me by not mentioning your mother? Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "You may unpack your luggage now." He went away. She opened her suitcase, but all that she took out was a shawl that had been her mother's. It was faded, but the colors were still pretty. She wrapped it around her. The room was cold. And she sat on the bed. Tears poured down her cheeks. "Mother," she whispered. "Mother." Presently she roused herself and went on with her unpacking. The suitcase contained everything she owned, a small number of shabby personal possessions, including some things that had been her mother's. Everything larger had been sold to pay for her mother's funeral. When she had finished, she spread the shawl on her bed to cover as much as possible of the coarse brown blanket. Later, while they ate a cold supper, her uncle said, "I received a letter from some woman by the name of Pigwash or Pigswell." "Miss Swirlis, sir?" suggested Sarah, naming the teacher of the little school she had attended. "There is no need to interrupt. I was about to say that I rather your brains are unlikely to earn you a living." Sarah knew she was not good at lessons, but Miss Swirls had always been very patient with her, and she wondered if she had really put it so unkindly. "And you are not trained to any skill. I have therefore asked Mr. Piper to instruct you in the art of housework, and we must hope you will be able to get into service at some big house, since I can't afford to keep you idle forever." "No, sir," murmured Sarah, when he paused as though for an answer. "Is that all you have to say, girl?" I'll work hard, sir." "See that you do." Sarah was too numb with misery to feel more than a dull interest in her fate. She didn't think her mother would have liked her to be a servant, but already she felt it would be preferable to living here with her uncle. "Shall I wash these things, sir?" she said when she had finished her meal. "Certainly not. I don't want my good china broken by an ignorant girl. You may put them carefully on the trolley and wheel it into the kitchen for Miss Piper." She wondered whether to tell him she had done the dishes for her mother for as long as she could remember, but she didn't dare. "Give those scraps to Thugden and see if he needs a drink. His kennel is outside the back door." She carried the plate of scraps outside and, peering around the dusk, located the kennel a few yards away. She began to creep towards it. At once there was a shifting sound and the dog's head poked out. She stood still. "Good boy," she said timidly. Thugden watched her in silence, and after a moment she went forward again. She could see 2 bowls right under his nose. Must she really go that close? Wouldn't he eat the scraps off the ground if she let them here? But she had to see if he needed a drink. Both bowls were empty. He stood quite still while she scraped the plates into one. But when she tried to pick up the other, he gave a terrible growl. She jumped back, stood undecided for a moment, and then returned miserably to the kitchen. Her uncle was waiting for her. He had a little smile on his lips, but this vanished almost at once. "How dare you take that plate out of the house?" he barked. It had scraps on it, sir," faltered Sarah. "What do you suppose your fingers are for, huh? You can't afford fastidious ways now, you know." "I'm sorry, sir." "Didn't he need a drink?" "Yes, sir, but he wouldn't let me take his bowl." There was a small silence. "Go and get it," he commanded coldly. Sarah turned slowly to the door. "Hurry!" Thugden was just finishing the scraps. "Good boy," pleaded Sarah. "Good Thugden. Let me take your bowl and fetch you some water." She stretched her hand out slowly. He began to growl. She grasped the bowl, and he put a paw on it from the other side. She began to sweat with fright, but made herself keep still. "Please let me have it, Thugden." She pulled it as gently. He suddenly lifted his paw and gave a short, sharp bark. It sounded almost like a laugh. When she took the bowl into the kitchen, her uncle said, "I told you to hurry." "I was as quick as I could be, sir," she replied quietly. "Sarah," his voice was even quieter than hers, "don't let me have to warn you too often about impertinence. My patience is not inexhaustible." As he left her, the kitchen dissolved into a sunlight bedroom, at which Polly, still half in the dream, looked with amazement. Oh, so it looks like we're getting a little bit of insight of what's happening or what used to happen on this farm. Polly's having dreams. They seem to have happened after she went and checked out that little wall where the waterfall was coming out of. She got frightened, she got spooked, and now she's having dreams about a girl named Sarah and her uncle and a dog. Oh my gosh, okay, so tomorrow's chapter 3, it's going to be a good one. It's called Polly Begins a Story. So if you're enjoying this story as much as I am reading it out loud, join me back tomorrow for the next chapter in our book, which I will show you again. The cover is called A Sound of Crying by Rhodey Sudbury. It's an old 1970s Scholastic book, but I bet you this is just going to get filled with so many things. Wait. We are going to learn a good story that no one's ever really read in a long time. Okay? Well, join me for part 3 tomorrow on Audiobooks with Gnomes, and I hope everybody has a fantastic Thursday.